Yearning for a scholarly son-in-law. At first, the humble Zevulun Binyamin didn't dare say a word to this brilliant young scholar Yitzchak Shaul, but little by little, the latter's gentle manner and obvious interest put him at his ease. He seemed so grateful that such an educated person should take any interest in him that the tears rushed to his eyes. "You cannot imagine what your kindness means to me," Zevulun Binyamin said. "I really have many problems I should be grateful to discuss with you if you have the time and patience to listen." "By all means," replied Yitzchak Shaul, "I shall be delighted to advise you in whichever way possible." Zevulun Binyamin continued eagerly. "My eldest daughter is now nearly 18 years old, and I feel I ought to be looking for a suitable husband for her. I would like a learned son-in-law, for although I am such an ignorant man myself, that has been due to the fact that I have lived all my life among non-Jewish uneducated peasants. I never had an opportunity to learn anything which you might include in the term education. That is why I felt I should so like my children to have the benefit of what I missed. My younger boys are also growing up, and I should love them to attend some yeshiva, but until now, whenever I as much as mentioned it to anyone, they just laughed at me, thinking me unworthy of having educated children." Rabbi Yitzchak Shaul was touched at the pathos in his voice and face of Zevulun Binyamin. "Don't you give a thought to those people. They are not worth thinking about. You have as much right to hope for educated children as anyone else. You just send them along to me, and I'll examine them and tell you if they are of a sufficiently high standard to be admitted to a yeshiva. If, however, they are not, but I find they have the necessary talent, I shall myself tutor them with the greatest of pleasure until they know enough to begin their studies at a yeshiva. Everything will be all right. Don't you worry, my friend," Yitzchak Shaul concluded, and Zevulun Binyamin's face lit up with pleasure at the warm and kindly words. "You have saved me from despair," the latter cried out gratefully. "I shall never forget you as long as I live." Yitzchak Shaul patted him on the shoulder understandingly. "And dare I ask you what I can do about my daughter?" asked Zevulun Binyamin hopefully. "I have never dared tell anyone how I yearn to have a learned husband for her. She is a lovely girl in every way. Now is it her fault, poor child, that she has such an ignoramus for a father?" "And why shouldn't you have a learned son-in-law?" said Yitzchak Shaul encouragingly. "You know," continued the veterinarian in a confidential tone, "I have saved quite a nice dowry for her, with a beautiful trousseau and sufficient money to provide a complete outfit of clothing for a prospective husband, too. I assure you, if the right suitor be found for her, he would be short of nothing in my house. I have always envied your father-in-law, his good fortune in obtaining such learned sons-in-law, although he himself is not educated. Why then should I not be able to provide my dear daughter with a learned husband, too?" So Zevulun Binyamin spoke with such yearning in his voice that Yitzchak Shaul was very moved. "I shall find you a son-in-law," Yitzchak Shaul told him confidently. And Zevulun Binyamin jumped for joy, hearing these unexpected words. Yitzchak Shaul explained to him that his father, Rabbi Nissen, lived in Harki, and that he took great delight in finding wives for the excellent young men of his acquaintance. He would therefore write to his father without delay, telling him all about Zevulun Binyamin's lovely daughter and asking him to find a nice young man for her. "But please tell your father the whole truth about me," said Zevulun Binyamin earnestly. "You had better tell him that I am a very lowly person earning my livelihood by skinning carcasses and healing sick animals. Tell him that my wife is as ignorant as I am, and her father was a cobbler until, in his old age, he gave up his cobbling and became a shamish in the shul in Dubrovna. Until I was married, I did not even know an aleph from a beis, and even now I do not know much more than a little ivrit and the essential brachas. I still cannot daven sufficiently well enough to follow the service with all the other congregants, and whenever I am called to the Torah, my teeth begin to chatter from fright, lest while I make the bracha, my tongue should get all tied up. I know full well that at such a time people laugh at me behind my back, if not openly, but is it my fault that I have been so cursed that I have never had the opportunity to study in my childhood like other Jews? I can honestly say, though, that I have never, since I can remember, told a lie, nor have I ever dealt dishonestly, either with Jew or non-Jew. I have also always impressed upon my children the importance of being honest and decent and kind to animals, as well as to people. In fact, I have always acted according to the best of my knowledge and understanding, which I know by comparison with other people's is not very high. Still, the truth must be told, even when it is not so pleasant, and so I shall not feel comfortable unless your father knows all there is to know about me and my family and about our humble origin." Zevulun Binyamin looked relieved when he had gotten that speech off his chest, and Yitzchak Shaul listened throughout with patience and understanding. On the following morning, Zevulun Binyamin brought a bag containing the money which he had saved for his daughter's dowry, and put it into Yitzchak Shaul's hand, saying, "I once heard that a common person need not be trusted, So I thought it better that you should see that I have the money, and he concluded simply, I should feel very much obliged to you if you would kindly keep it in your possession until we need it. While the honesty and simplicity of the humble, uneducated Zevulun Binyamin made a deep impression upon the scholarly Yitzchak Shaul, the latter's sympathetic understanding and friendliness towards Zevulun Binyamin, as if to an equal, absolutely carried him into the seventh heaven of delight. One day, Zevulun Binyamin asked him, Please, Rabbi, tell me why is it that when I am among non-Jews, they never seem to take any notice of the fact that I am uneducated. They also do not require so much education. They go to church on Sundays and just listen to their priest praying or giving them a sermon, and it is sufficient for them. But we Jews have to be able to read and recite all the prayers and services ourselves, and if we can't, as it is the unfortunate case with myself, see how I am laughed at and scoffed at. My dear friend, replied the scholar, no one has the right to make fun of you under any circumstances, but I will tell you why it is necessary for us Jews to know more than the non-Jews. You see, God offered the Torah to the nations, but the only nation to accept it was the Jewish people. They are therefore under obligation to study the Torah and carry out all its teachings. They will then be a credit to their Maker and an example to the rest of the world to follow. But don't think that only a scholar is a man of account. Remember that even when there are 9 scholars, they do not constitute a minyan until a 10th Jew comes to join them. Nor when there are 2 Torah scholars can they constitute a mezumin until a 3rd Jew joins them. And in both cases, it is not essential for the additional Jew to be a scholar like the others, but the mere fact of his being a Jew gives him an equal right and status. Zevulun Binyamin's eyes lit up with pleasure and relief as his friend continued, All Jews are equal in relation to matters of sanctity, except the Kohanim, who are appointed for special duties, but all other Jews can carry out all other mitzvahs of the Torah and earn equal merit. As for one's occupation, one need never be ashamed of one's work, so long as it is done honestly. All the time Yitzchak Shaul spoke to this uneducated Jew as an equal, and quoted the sayings of the sages to him in such simple language and explained them to him so clearly that even the simple soul could understand and appreciate them. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish tells us in the Gemara Chula 92a, the Jewish people is comparable to a vine, whose branches represent the Balabatim, whose clusters of grapes represent the scholars, and whose leaves represent the uneducated, the Ami Aretz. The scholars therefore must pray for the welfare of those who are less educated than themselves, for the latter protect the former, as the leaves protect the fruit. Yitzchak Shaul told Zevulun Binyamin that the Jews differ from non-Jews in that the former value learning so highly that there are Jews who spend all their time in Torah study. He also encouraged the veterinarian to attend a shiur at the Beit HaMedrash between Mincha and Ma'ariv when the ordinary people come, and had everything explained to them in simple terms. And if even this would be too difficult for him to understand, Yitzchak Shaul assured him that by listening to the discourse day after day, he would eventually become familiar with the terms used and learn to understand their meaning. Above all, remember that you are a Jew the same as the others, with the same opportunities and responsibilities. When Zevulun Binyamin heard such encouraging words from his new friend, he was absolutely thrilled and became filled with a burning desire to show his acquaintances that he could become as good a Jew as they. And so he hastened to assure his friend that he was more than willing to come to the shiur at the Beit HaMedrash as he had suggested. I don't mind if they laugh at me now, Zevulun Binyamin said with a new confidence in himself. I will show them what I can do. From that time, he really began to believe in himself and to acquire a certain amount of self-respect, so sadly lacking before. He attended the shiur in the Beit HaMedrash most religiously and listened so carefully and earnestly to all that he heard there. If ever something cropped up that he could not understand, he always came to Yitzchak Shaul, who was only too pleased to explain things to him, so the problem disappeared. Meanwhile, Yitzchak Shaul received a reply from his father, Rabbi Nissen, in connection with the matter of the match for Zevulun Binyamin's daughter. In his reply, Rabbi Nissen stated that there were several very worthy young men, all Torah scholars, who could be said to be a good match for Dina, the daughter of Zevulun Binyamin, but he wished to give the matter his further consideration so that he could be more definite about the one he would finally recommend. When Yitzchak Shaul reported the contents of the letter he had received to Zevulun Binyamin, the latter was overjoyed. He really appreciated such genuine interest on the part of someone who had not even met him. And more than anything, he appreciated the tone of the letter, which by no word or syllable suggested that he had anything but respect for the humble and ignorant Jew who was looking for a scholarly son-in-law. It was wonderful to feel that he was being treated as an equal and not looked down upon, as he had been practically all his life. And when he dwelt upon the possibility of really and truly becoming the father-in-law of a Torah scholar, his pleasure and anticipation carried him into indescribable raptures. God was being very good to him, and he would try to be worthy of such undeserved grace in every way he could think of. So decided Zevulun Binyamin out of the fullness of his grateful heart.